Hello, welcome to another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Monday, February 12th, the day after Super Bowl Sunday, Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. The Kansas City Chiefs are Super Bowl champions once again for the third time in 5 seasons. The Chiefs, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes will take home the Lombardi back to Kansas City, and Mahomes earns his third Super Bowl MVP. A lot to dissect from last night's game. Started out slow, looked like it had Patriots, Rams written all over it, a potential 13-6, 13-3, 13-10 final with very minimal scoring, a lot of sloppy turnovers, and then all of a sudden, the second half adjustments from the Kansas City Chiefs came into play. Usher performed at halftime, and here came Kansas City as they got the job done 25-22 in overtime. A game winner to former Jet McCole Harmon, which we'll get to here in a second. We'll dissect the game from last night. We'll take a deep breakdown into it from both teams' perspective, my overall takeaways from last night's game, and of course a little bit of a sneak peek preview of the offseason for both these teams and who potentially could dethrone Kansas City. And while it is early, Mahomes is still young. He's still got a lot left in his career. Is it fair to start comparing Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady, because he sure is on that trajectory of being right up there with Tom Brady and some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? He is no doubt the best quarterback in football right now. And is he on his way, when all's said and done, being better than Tom Brady, who for a while there, nobody thought any of his accomplishments would have been reachable? But here we are witnessing Patrick Mahomes do a lot of what Tom Brady did early in his career, and actually, in a way, even better. When you look at Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes' numbers through their first 7 seasons, they are very, very heavily favored towards Patrick Mahomes. So we'll break that down a little later on. We'll also get you ready for the night in New York sports tonight, as you got a couple matchups. The Rangers are in action at home against the Flames. You've got the Knicks tonight on the road against the Rockets. So the Islanders have the night off. Nets have the night off. They'll be back in action tomorrow for 2 straight games against the Celtics, a home and away. So we'll get you ready for those games as well tonight. But we'll start with the Super Bowl, of course. Yesterday, I'll just say this. I'll open with this. Super Bowl, the day after the Super Bowl, Monday, it should be a national holiday. It really should be, because no matter whether your team won, now if your team won, you're all pumped up, you're happy today, you're fired up. You probably couldn't sleep last night because you were so excited and all fired up and adrenaline and all that great stuff. Same thing with the players. But if you're just a fan, like a football fan watching this, or anybody else watching this, and you didn't have a dog in the fight and you were staying up until at least Eastern Standard Time, 11:30 at night, getting up today was tough. Getting up and going about your daily day was tough, and I think Super Bowl Monday needs to be a thing. The holiday, we've been talking about it for years, but they will probably never do it, but it should be a thing, and I think most people can agree here. Most people call out of work and all that stuff anyway, but either way, that doesn't matter. We're almost through the day anyway. We'll get into the game and all that stuff, but I got to start with this. You know, the ending of last night's game was crazy. You know, you have the Chiefs coming back, all that great stuff. But just as a diehard Jet fan, and all these Jet fans, New York sports fans, you always feel like somehow these biggest moments in these big games always find a way to come back to the Jets. And I know sometimes you might be nitpicking, if you're a Jet fan, finding former Jets that either make a big play or have a really bad play, blow a game, something like that. But for some reason, it always feels like these big moments in these games always find a way to come back to the Jets, whether it's a former player, a former coach, whatever it might be. And last night was another example of that happening. If I would have told you, go back, we're going to go back in time a little bit. We're going to make time travel a real thing for a second here. You go back in time to May, June, when all the vibes were high, the New York Jets were getting ready to go to training camp. When you got to training camp, everyone was all fired up. McCole Harmon is a New York Jet, right? Brings speed, good slot guy, can play the outside, can return punts, can return kicks, all that good stuff. Has experience with Kansas City. Won a Super Bowl, was an upgrade over Braxton Berrios, better receiver than Berrios was just a good upgrade, a solid piece you thought to the team, a guy that seemed like he was meshing well with Rodgers, had some drops early in camp, but either way, if you would have told me back in July and August that McCole Harmon, if you would have told anybody in the NFL world that McCole Harmon would catch the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 58, everyone would have thought, oh man, Aaron Rodgers, the New York Jets would go all the way, win their second Super Bowl, their first in 55 years. This would be great. Look at us. And here we go last night. It is the former Jet McCole Harmon on the Chiefs because they released him in the middle of the season, catching the game-winning touchdown. And if you go back in time and if you watched Hard Knocks, Oz, the mentalist, came to the Jets facility. The guy is unreal. The guy is crazy. The tricks that he does. I'm sure many of you have seen this, but they predicted the Super Bowl. It was Jets 31, Niners 21. And now McCole Harmon was the one that he had him think of the scores, think of the teams that they beat, and sure enough, he caught the game-winning touchdown against the 49ers. That makes you feel like, yeah, the NFL might be scripted. Either way, if I would have told you back in June, a Jet fan, an NFL fan, that McCole Harmon would catch the game-winning touchdown to win the Super Bowl in overtime against the 49ers, we all would have thought, I would have signed up for that right away because that means, man, the Jets are winning it. Of course, Aaron Rodgers goes down on 4 snaps. McCole Harmon leaves. The Jets are paying his salary. They're paying him. They were paying him to catch a game-winning touchdown to win a Super Bowl for another team. That just shows you the unlucky nature of the New York Jets. Now, I will admit, by no means am I sitting here right now saying the Jets should have gotten rid of McCole Harmon. They needed to. He didn't have a role. It was a win-win for both sides because he didn't want to be here. The Jets seemed like they didn't really want him. I still felt like you could have found a role for him, but he wasn't doing anything here. He was never going to work here. It never was. And I'm sure he wanted to go to a contender and get an opportunity to contend for a Super Bowl, get an opportunity to go to another team like Kansas City, who he spent his entire career up to that point in Kansas City, go back there, got a lot of relationships, fits right into the thing, already knows the system, got right into a playoff race. So by no means am I saying it was a mistake for the Jets to get rid of him. McCole Harmon would have done nothing. He would have, if we're being honest here, McCole Harmon didn't do a whole lot this entire playoff. The divisional round against the Bills, he was terrible. He almost blew the game when he fumbled in the end zone and was a touchback. So I'm by no means am I sitting here saying, oh, the Jets shouldn't have gotten rid of McCole Harmon. It's just unlucky that here we are. If you would have told me McCole Harmon scores the game-winning touchdown, we all would have been on a Jets train. And here it is. Jets are paying him. They get rid of him. He's catching the game-winning touchdown for another team in the Kansas City Chiefs, which makes it sting a little bit, but it is what it is. Pain as a Jet fan, and I think you are almost numb to it at this point. So I had to start with that. Had to start with the Jet perspective because if you are a Jet fan, that's one of your biggest takeaways from last night. A player that was on your roster this season, going to another team, doing what he did last night, and thinking that that could have been you, thinking that if you told us in the summer that was going to happen, we'd all would have signed up for it. And here we are. Of course, it happens, but not the case. And that's what makes the NFL king, because you never know when stories like that are going to happen. A guy that was on the Jets earlier in the season was all signs were saying, oh, this is it. The Jets had a chance to go on a deep run. He predicted with Oz on Hard Knocks, we're going to beat the Niners. And sure enough, he's beating Niners except for a different team scoring game-winning touchdown. It's crazy. And again, that's why the NFL king. And if you want to say it's scripted, then that probably actually helps your case in that situation. So we'll stay with the Chiefs' perspective here. Look, they played like trash in the first half. They were awful. You had the fumble by Pacheco in the red zone. Both running backs with early fumbles that certainly hurt their respective teams. But Kansas City early on, Mahomes was getting hit. There wasn't too many penalties. I'll give credit to the refs last night. The refs were great last night. I will give credit. While we all agree that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the refereeing in the NFL, last night the refs I thought were fantastic. I thought there was probably one of the best games that was reffed in a very long time. There wasn't any egregious calls. There wasn't any late game situations where there was a fluky hold or a fluky pass interference or a roughing the passer that could cause the outcome of the game. None of that happened. They made the calls that they needed to make. There was obvious calls that were made. No complaints by either side. There was nothing outrageous. There was no late in that game in overtime, because I'll tell you what, it creeped into your mind in overtime. This is where the refs take over. They're going to make a stupid call that's going to ruin the Super Bowl, that's going to control the game and completely turn things around. And that didn't happen. So you got to give them a lot of credit. They didn't make any calls. They let the guys play. And in all fairness, both teams played a pretty clean game too. I mean, I don't think there was many plays where you saw, it was a pretty clean game. There wasn't many. Both teams came, they were pretty ready to go. Like, there wasn't really, I don't think, much room there for bad calls. The calls that were made, that need to be made, were made. But just back to the earlier part, they had some of those false starts. They had, of course, the fumble. There was just, Mahomes was pressured. They were losing the battle up front. They were losing up front, and that's never a good sign early on in games when you lose the battle up front, because that ultimately means you lose the trench warfare, you lose the battle up front. Most of the time, you're going to lose the game, and they came out in the second half. And I think the second half just shows you why Kansas City is so tough to bring down, why they are so difficult to take down, because of the coaching, because of the quarterback. You can never count them out. And you saw that again last night, the halftime adjustments. You went into halftime, and you're thinking to yourself, man, they looked awful. You can make the argument that was their worst half of football that they played in months. You could probably go all the way back to that Christmas Day game against the Raiders, which was the last game, by the way, that they lost. And that loss was probably the best thing that could have happened to this Kansas City team, because that was like rock bottom. That was a wake-up call for everybody in that locker room, that what they were doing, the way that they were doing things, their preparation was not working. They needed something. They needed to change. They needed to dial in. They needed to lock in, because they realized we better watch out, or else, forget the possibility of even having a home wild card game. We have to go on the road for that. Like, just that whole mindset that they kind of got complacent at times. They were struggling. That loss, I think, was a real wake-up call that's saying, man, we're not anywhere where we need to be. And then they get that wake-up call and they go on and win the rest of the way. But that was probably their worst half of football in that moment, was the first half. Sack, punt. Travis Kelce was barely involved. Bumps into Andy Reid. You had the late penalty on L'Jarius Sneed late in the first half. They were in shambles. There was issues on the sideline, guys yelling at each other. Travis Kelce almost tackling his head coach, basically tackling him, which I will tell you what, he is so lucky they won last night, because if they don't win the game, the story, instead of being, oh, they win 3 in 5 years, all that would be, Kelce bumps into Andy Reid. Is there a rift? All that stuff, because it's easy to shake that off now when you win. But if they would have lost that game, and Kelce, let's say, didn't have a very good game, or it didn't end up getting involved like he did late in that game, we'd be all talking. The main story would be, is Andy Reid and Travis Kelce's relationship fractured? That would be the conversation. So very lucky they won. But just the brilliance of Aaron D. Reid, the dominance of Patrick Mahomes to come out in that second half and, let's put it simply, manhandle the Niners. They gave the Niners a taste of their own medicine in that second half, especially after that interception from Patrick Mahomes. That early interception there, you're thinking to yourself, all right, it's 10-3. The Niners have a chance here to make it a 17-3 game. They had good field position. They can run away with this. They didn't. They got complacent. The Niners got away with what's working. They got away from the run, got more to the pass. Shanahan got out-coached. They got manhandled in the second half. But credit to the Niners. Credit to the Chiefs. You knew going into that fourth quarter, or the overtime rather, they were not losing that game. You knew it. No way is Mahomes going to lose a Super Bowl in overtime. There was no way. No way. That just wasn't going to happen. I knew it. Once overtime went there, that was the best thing. That was automatically lost for the Niners. You knew that the Chiefs were going to win that game. They were going to find a way in overtime. There was no way Mahomes was losing that. And sure enough, there they are. They do, and they don't. And I was kind of perplexed with the end of the game situation. why they let the clock run all the way down to like 6 seconds. That was basically the final play. I mean, there's a chance Harmon drops it that there was like 2 seconds left. If he would have dropped it, there probably would have been 1 second left to kick a field goal. But they let that run all the way down. There's a chance if Hardman bobbles that, there's a chance the clock hits triple zeros and they lose that game. It was kind of weird the way that they were doing that. I don't know why they let the clock run all the way down. It was not like if they score, they give the Niners the ball back. No, they score, they win. They had 20 seconds. They could have taken all the time they needed. Instead, they let it run all the way down for dramatic effects, I guess, and then they ended up scoring. But I think that's something that not many people are talking about today. The fact that the Chiefs it was like 25 seconds. They let it go all the way down to 6. There was no need for that. Surprised they did it, but they did, and it ended up working. But if it doesn't, that'd be a big conversation today. So, look, Kansas City did not play a full 60-minute game, if we're being completely honest. They played probably, I would say, 45 minutes, talking about overtime too. They did not play the first half. Wasn't a whole lot going in the first half. And for the Niners, that was the opposite. The Niners have been that team that's been known for coming back this playoffs, came back against Green Bay. Of course, we all know came back against Detroit. But blowing leads against Kansas City is just not going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. And I said this on Friday when I do my show with Damari on the channel, which we'll be doing more of those throughout the offseason. Got some exciting announcements regarding that. But when we were doing the show, we both were saying, San Francisco, you've got to play a full 60-minute game. Kansas City's not a team, and we said this more so because San Francisco couldn't fall down early. Not so much them blowing the lead late, but falling down early. Because San Francisco, they've had a tendency in these playoffs to fall down early in games. And they played their 2 games against the Lions and the Packers were 30-minute efforts. They showed no effort in the first half of either of those games. Came out in the second half and dominated. That couldn't happen last night. Unfortunately, it did, except on the opposite end. They didn't show up in the second half. They didn't. Now, I know, I get it. They were still winning. They had the chance to stop the Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs had that one third down or second and 14 situation. They had a 4th and 1. It was like a 4th and a half yard. The Niners had to stop them. They had chances in that game, even with the poor second half play. They went down, kicked the field goal to open overtime. All they needed to do was get a stop. They had a chance. Even with them playing poor, they had a chance. I thought they got away from the run too much. I thought in the second half, they got too greedy. It reminded me a lot of Patriots-Falcons from a couple years ago, the 28-3 game. It really did. The Falcons just kept passing, and it wasn't working. I don't know why they got away from Devontae Freeman. Same thing last night. They got away from CMC, I thought. And then late in the game, they got back to him. Once the Niners started to tie it up, and the game became close, and all of a sudden the Niners or the San Francisco rat tied up, and all of a sudden here you are, you're in this close battle as opposed, you no longer have a touchdown lead. For a little bit there, KC had the lead. Then they got back to CMC. I don't know why they did that. And I'll tell you what, I thought Purdy was solid last night. I thought he did what he needs to do. I don't think Purdy will ever be the quarterback, and look, he's not the reason they lost. There's one guy that I think needs to be blamed for this, and we'll get to him here in a second. Purdy's just never the guy that I think is going to go out there and take over a game and win you a Super Bowl. He's just not that guy. It's the weapons. It's the short, quick passes, getting the ball into your weapons' hands, letting them make play. Of course, we saw what CMC could do even with the fumble. I had a couple big plays at 80 yards. The touchdown from Jawan Jennings, who would have been the Super Bowl MVP if they would have won the game, of course. But I thought Purdy was all right. I thought he was solid. And I thought there's been some duds that Purdy's had. There wasn't that. There's been a lot of throws that Purdy has made this year that are really questionable. I thought he made really good reads. I thought he made good decisions. Hit the guys he needed to hit. He played well. It's not his fault. A lot of people will go to him as his fault, but it's not. I think that's pretty obvious. The guy to blame for all this is Kyle Shanahan. Couple moments. Number one, I talk about the play calling in the second half. They got outcoached. They got outcoached in the second half. The Chiefs made the adjustments. The Niners were complacent. They didn't make the necessary adjustments. They got too comfortable. Even with all of Shanahan's issues in the Super Bowl, the offensive coordinator of the Falcons when they were up 28-3, 2019 when they blew the 10-point lead, and then, of course, this year blowing another lead. That's 0 for 3 in Super Bowls for Shanahan. 2 as a head coach. Number two, the overtime stuff was very perplexing to me. I personally would have deferred. You hear reports today, you hear the players last night from San Francisco openly admit they didn't know the rules. That's a problem. That's on the coach. How do you not know the overtime rules? The biggest game of the year, Super Bowl 58. You're going into overtime and you don't know the overtime rules. And that is why they received, because they thought, hey, they go down and score, we win this game, they don't get the ball back. Of course, that didn't happen. They kicked the field goal. Even if it was the old overtime rules, a field goal wouldn't get the job done. The Chiefs would have gotten the ball back either way. But not knowing the rules of overtime, are you kidding me? And I think you defer in that situation. I really do. You got to trust your defense. I know your defense was out there for a while, but they do get the break in between quarters. You got to, in between overtime, you got to trust your defense in that situation. Put the pressure on the Chiefs. Whoever gets the ball back has the most pressure on them. Because if you don't go down there and score, all of a sudden, your backs are against the wall. All they need is a field goal. And it also allows you to understand what you need. Right? You get to a 4th and 5 situation, which is what they were in last night. That 4th and short situation in the red zone where they didn't go for it, kick the field goal. But if the Chiefs would have gotten the ball back and they, let's say, kicked the field goal or scored a touchdown in 4th and 3, you know you have to go for it there. You start to play the whole hindsight 2020 game, not quite knowing whether to punt, whether to play safe, how aggressive you want to be when you get the ball first. Because you know the other team's got to get it. But once you know what you're up against, hey, we need a touchdown. All right. We need a field goal. All right. All we need is the points. All right. Once you know what you're up against, I think that really does help. And, of course, we saw that from Kansas City. Another thing, personally, I would have went for it. I would have went for it on that 4th down and goal. I would have went for it, personally. It was a 4th and 4. I would have gone for it in that situation for a couple reasons. Number one, you score a touchdown. To me, it really wasn't I understand the whole field goal, but you most likely knew that the Chiefs are going to find a way to go down. You felt pretty confident they were probably going to go down and score. You really did. With Mahomes, you felt pretty confident they were going to go down and score. So the mindset in that moment, for me, if I was Shanahan, would be, it's the Super Bowl. It's 4th and 4. I got to trust my offense, and I got to trust my defense. You were at the 9-yard line. You needed 4 yards. You get those 4 yards there, you score a touchdown, boom, all the pressure on Kansas City. The worst case scenario is you're going to another overtime. Or you miss it, and the Chiefs have got to go 91 yards to score. I would have taken my chances with the defense backed up, especially with some of the pressure that they've been able to get that game. I would have taken my chances with that. Because the field goal, you knew, the Chiefs were not going to settle for a field goal. You knew they were going to go down and score. That's what you knew. So, and I think it shows a little bit more trust in your defense as well. I'm not going to kill Shanahan too much for that. I will kill Shanahan for the not knowing the overtime rules, the players not knowing that. How do you not know that? That's the coach. The coach, you got to, the players should know it, but you're in the Super Bowl and these guys don't know the rules. Are you kidding me? There's people that the only game they'll watch all year in the NFL is the Super Bowl. That's the only game they'll watch all football season. They probably knew the rules, and yet the guys on the field didn't know. How do you let that happen? How? That is ridiculous. So, and then he got outcoached in the second half. Completely outcoached. Very similar to the Falcons and the Patriots. And guess who was the offense coordinator there? Kyle Shanahan. Look, I like Shanahan a lot. I think he's an awesome offensive mind. What he's done to Purdy, he's done wonders with him. And he's gotten to 2 Super Bowls with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. There's not many coaches in the NFL that I think could do that. And I get that. But at some point, he's got to get over this hump. And you really start to have questions, especially after last night. Okay, is he really the guy to get you over the hump? Is he really the guy that's going to get this team over the hump and win a Super Bowl? I don't know if you can say that. I really don't. They've gone to 4 NFC title games, 2 Super Bowls along this span. Have had a lot of success, but not been able to finish. And they should have, they did not learn from that first time. Blowing a lead, it's the same situation. And that's the scary part. They blew a lead the first time. They blew a lead the second time. They had so many chances in this game to run away with it. So many chances. And they handed them the game. They went 101 minutes, I think it was. Jim Nantz said 101 minutes from halftime to the second half where they got a first down. 101 minutes without a first down. That is ridiculous. You're never going to win that way. Never going to win. No adjustments. Chiefs made the adjustments. The Niners were completely outmanned. Shanahan's got to get it done eventually. And the Niners have a lot of questions facing them this offseason. They really do. And, look, anytime you win the Super Bowl, or lose the Super Bowl, it is so hard to come back. Now, this Niners team is the odds-on favorite to win again next year, which I will never understand why they are the odds-on favorite to win. When you have the Chiefs staring at a three-peat right there, and it's going to be tough for any team to dethrone Kansas City. But in terms of Shanahan, I think, he's got to. This is it for him. I think he's got the next year or two. He's got to take it. He's got to win one. He's got to win one. Possibly next year, the year after, has got to be his leash. Do you start to have the serious concern, the real concern of not being able to finish, not being able to take care of business in the big game? You really do. And this was another one of those, situations where they could not finish in the big moment. Last year he got the pass for, okay, he didn't have Purdy. Purdy got hurt, all that stuff. They didn't have a quarterback. They were running Wildcat there for a little while against the Eagles. All right, that's fair. But what about 2021, where you lose to the Rams in the title game? You lose to the Rams in 2021. Then you lose last year. This year you get to the Super Bowl. You lose that. You lose the Super Bowl the year prior. And even that Rams game too. They were up by 10 in the third quarter. You go to the fourth, they got outscored 13-0 in the fourth, and they lost that game. I mean, how many more times can you blow huge games in the playoffs? They blew a conference game and 2 Super Bowls. Not many guys get leashes for that. Shanahan will. I'm not saying you fire him and blow it up, but you got to do some reevaluating. You got to figure this thing out, because if he doesn't win one next year or the year after, I think you got to find somebody that can, because he has shown no ability to do so as an offensive coordinator and as a head coach. So that's the Niners' perspective. Look, of course, the debate topic today is Mahomes and Brady, and I'll be openly admitted. I think when all is said and done, Mahomes will be better than Brady. I will say it. I've said it for a while. I said it all last week. I've said it for a very long time. Look, I think it's obvious. In terms of talent, Mahomes is one of the most, I think you can make the case already, Mahomes is the most talented quarterback of all time. I think you can make the case that. In terms of all the physical tools. He's more talented than Brady. There's no doubt about it. You can't even debate that. He's more talented than Brady. In terms of athleticism, arm, all that stuff. He's more talented than Brady. Brady was just a pure winner. Mahomes has shown the ability to be extremely talented and win at a very high level. And you look at the numbers in his 7 years. They both played in exactly the same amount of 96 games. Mahomes is a lot better than Brady in a couple areas. Got a better completion percentage. In pretty much every statistical category, he's better than Brady. He's better than Brady was. I know people are scared sometimes to go down the road of the GOAT debate because it's a sensitive topic, when we compare somebody to the greatest of all time. But we are witnessing another Patriots-like dynasty. We are. The Patriots in their first 5 seasons, very similar to the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the first team since New England went back-to-back. They've got the quarterback. They've got the coach combo. And they're not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. Mahomes, same amount of Super Bowls as Brady had in the first 7 seasons. I mean, and Mahomes has more Pro Bowls, more All-Pros, more Super Bowls MVPs, more MVPs. Mahomes statistically is better in just about every category than Brady was. So he's on that trajectory. Now, look, he's got 3. It is crazy to think that he can hit 7, but he's on the same pace of Brady. And a lot of people forget this. The Patriots went 10 years there without winning a Super Bowl. There was a long stretch there where they didn't win. From their one that they won in 2004 to the 2014 one, Malcolm Butler interception. Now, in between those, they did have the 2 losses to the Giants. And the Chiefs are going to still find, they're going to lose at probably at least 1 or 2 more Super Bowls. If they get to, let's say they get to 5 more Super Bowls, that's going to be the big test. You're at 3. Can you win 4 the next 5 and get to 7? Do you go 3-2? They're 3-1 right now in Super Bowls. 3-1. The only loss, of course, came to Brady. And that'll also be a debate, the side of it as well. When you look at the head-to-head, if Mahomes, let's say, goes on this incredible run and wins 7 Super Bowls, wins 3 more or 4 more, and goes 7-1 in the Super Bowl, everyone's going to be like, oh, he went 7-1, that's crazy. But that only loss came to Brady. And that could affect Mahomes down the road when you talk about the GOAT conversation is head-to-head. Brady beat him in the AFC Championship game in 2018. He beat him in the Super Bowl the year later with Tampa, or 2 years later. So you can make the strong case there, like that. You can make the strong case looking back on it, you know, when Mahomes is all said and done, when his career is all said and done, you can make the case, oh, he's the only one. Brady beat him in the Super Bowl. They went head-to-head, Brady beat him. So can you really call Mahomes the GOAT if Brady beat him head-to-head? That could be a topic. But look, he's on that path. He hasn't surpassed Brady. If Mahomes were to retire right now, Brady would still be the GOAT because he's got 4 more Super Bowls. And it's going to take a lot to win 4 more. It is. You assume Mahomes probably got 10 years left in the NFL. Let's say 10 more years, right? That'd take him up to 38, 39. 10 more years left. There's always that 1 year you got to throw in there, and you hope this never happens, but there's always that one injury season, right? Brady had the torn ACL. Like, there's always a year where he might get hurt, miss the entire season. That happens to just about every player. There's always throughout every player's career, very rarely do you see a guy go through his entire career and not miss a chunk of games 1 year. Like, there's going to be maybe a season where Mahomes misses a chunk of games. He might miss 12 games, including the playoffs, and they don't go anywhere. So there might be that wash season, which is what Brady had. So if you cut that down, you go 9 more years left. Is it crazy to win 4 in 9 years? They've won 3 in 5. And that brings you to the next topic, is who's stopping them in the AFC? It's tough to say. Now, I think the best chance to stop Mahomes in the AFC is Burrow. And for the simple reason of they've already done it. They, of course, 2021 beat them at Arrowhead. They went to the Super Bowl, of course, lost to the Rams. But that was the only time. And last year, they gave them a real good run for their money in the AFC title game again. So if there was a team to dethrone Mahomes next year, it'd be the Bengals. To stop them because they've already done it. Burrow's already done it. Burrow and Brady are the only ones to do it. Other than that, Mahomes has been dominant against everybody. So I'd say it's the Bengals one. The Bills, it's tough to say. The Bills have success against them in the regular season, but I think you start to I thought this was their year. I don't think you're ever going to get a better chance to beat Kansas City than in your own building. Because the Chiefs are only going to get better. That's the scary part. This was probably the worst team Mahomes played with, and he just won a Super Bowl with them. He won a Super Bowl without a number 1 receiver. Not many times do you see that. I know you have Kelsey, but actual number 1 receiver, not many times you see that. It's crazy to think. Allen has, and not just Allen, a lot of these quarterbacks have had number 1 receivers all these years. They've never gone to the mountaintop. This was the year for Buffalo. I strongly believe that. And I think if Buffalo got past Kansas City, they would have went on and won it. I really do. I really do. They would have beaten San Francisco last night, and they would have beaten Baltimore. Questions around Diggs' future. Buffalo could be the case. I really like Houston. I don't know if next year is probably still a year or two too early where they'll get to that level. But Burrow, that was their first big season. Could Stroud have a potential Burrow situation where he just takes over in year 2 and goes on his way and maybe beats Mahomes next season? It's possible. I mean, look, you go to the Jets as well with Rodgers. I think there's a chance. I think the Jets' defense matches up against anybody. The issue is all the other problems. I don't think you have a lot of trust in Saleh out-coaching Reed. I don't think you have a lot of trust in, you got to get the offense line right. There's so many questions with the Jets to even start thinking about next year, but I'd say your best case scenario is the Bengals. And then probably right behind them would probably be the Bills just because they've been right there. At some point, they might take care of business. At some point, they maybe get the job done. They've been right on the doorstep. One of these years it's got to work. So, and they've had the success against them in the regular season. It's got to carry over to the playoffs. And then after those two teams, the Dolphins I don't see as legitimate threats. The Chargers are more down the road, maybe a year or two from now if Harbaugh builds like he had to San Francisco, then I could see them getting to a Super Bowl potentially. But they got a lot of work on the defense, and they got some salary cap stuff they got to figure it out. They're not going to be Super Bowl team bound in year one with Harbaugh. They're just not. They're going to have to do a little bit of a reset. I think there's a chance they're a playoff team. They were a playoff team with Brandon Staley 2 years ago. I don't think it's crazy to say they could be a playoff team in year one with Jim Harbaugh. But they're good enough to throw in Mahomes now. So it's a lot of Bengals. It's probably it's really the Bengals that are number one. But and right now it's tough to say. I mean the Chiefs are the top of the tier in the AFC. It's the Chiefs and everybody else. You know, we thought that this year maybe the Bills were entering that category. We thought in the offseason that maybe the Jets can get onto their level and figure them out with their defense and Rodgers. You know, we thought the Bengals, of course, we've already talked about them. When they beat them in Arrowhead, you thought, man, Bengals might be, maybe there's a new reign here in the AFC. A lot of people thought, oh, here comes Justin Herbert and the Chargers, and all that just gets washed away. And everybody's still looking up at Kansas City. So, you know, I always say, you know, a lot of people hate on greatness. You know, we all do. We all complain, oh, the Chiefs keep winning. Look, you can complain all you want. Somebody's got to find a way to stop them. Somebody in the AFC's got to figure out a way to stop them. Is it Cincinnati? Is it Buffalo? I think Miami is a crazy stretch. I mean, Miami's got – I don't think Miami's – they may never win a playoff game ever again. But, look, you have Tyreek Hill. I guess anything's possible. Is it the Jets? Is it the Texans? You know, who is it? Maybe nobody. You know, we good chance we're sitting here 1 year from now. We're talking about the Chiefs winning 3 in a row, and we're having the same conversation. But it's tough to say. And in the NFC, I mean, the NFC there's so many questions in the NFC. You know, you could maybe say the Packers. You know, in terms of a team that could get there as opposed to the Niners. I mean, of course, the Cowboys are always going to be the conversation. The Eagles will still be relevant. You know, does a team like the Packers take a year 2 jump? My kind of boldish Super Bowl prediction was Texans-Packers for next year. Not an obvious one, like taking the Chiefs and the Niners again, or one of those teams. 2 teams not named the Chiefs and the Niners that I think have a chance again to the Super Bowl next year is I think the Texans and the Packers. I'm high on both those teams. Both those teams in both their divisional round games had chances to go to the title game. You know, they both won. You know, the Packers went on the road and won a wild card game. The Texans obviously blew out a team with experience in the Browns at home. So I think, you know, both those teams have a chance. But in terms of like the NFC, it's tough because the Cowboys, you know, you really can't. They have all the regular season talent, but you really don't know how to feel about their playoffs. You really don't. They're similar to Buffalo in terms of Buffalo not really so much this year in the regular season, but they're going to have a huge regular season. And when the playoffs come around, it's a totally different ballgame. They're a totally different team. Will that ever snap? We'll see. So, but yeah, I mean, the Mahomes, the Chiefs, this is a dynasty. This is a dynasty we're witnessing. I think this officially I don't know how to pronounce. I'm not going to pronounce that. This officially, I think, really shows you we're witnessing a dynasty. 3 of 5 years. They're 3-1 they've been to 4 Super Bowls in 5 seasons. They've won 3 of those 4. That's a dynasty. So, you know, there's a good chance that it's like New England. They're never going to go away, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, we could talk about teams taking them down, and they're not going to win every single season, but you know they're always going to be there. I think you can always count on the title game. The Chiefs are going to be in it for a very long time. They're right there. Yeah. You know, the Chiefs have. This is about as well executed, I think, as a rebuild as you could think of, or not a rebuild, but the Chiefs. We all were saying, oh, Mahomes, everyone's hyping up coming out of college, and this is everything they could have asked for. So as for the New York sports update here tonight, you got the Rangers and the Flames. The Knicks will hit the road and face the Rockets. Active deadline for the Knicks, bringing in Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. They're banged up, though. Got to get some pieces back. Got to get healthy. They're going to take some lumps here over the next couple weeks. But once they're ready to go, coming out of the All-Star break into the postseason, it's going to be a fun time. And it always makes you think, whenever the Super Bowl concludes, who is the closest team in New York? Just me personally. I was talking to somebody today. Who is the closest team in New York to a championship? Now, maybe this is biased. I'll say the Rangers, but the Rangers have their own set of issues. Things that they need to fix. I think the Knicks are right there. I think the Knicks' path is a lot easier than the Rangers. I will say that. The Rangers might have more talent, but the Knicks' path is a lot easier. I think you look at the Eastern Conference and say really only 2 teams scary with the Knicks. As opposed to the Rangers, I think you can make a case for more than that. There's a lot of really, a couple really good teams in the Eastern Conference in their own, in their own division, as well. I think you can make the case too. Just with the Knicks in general, I think. I mean, you could say the same about the Nets, but the Nets when they, I've talked about this obviously. Talking Rangers channel I have on YouTube. I think both teams are very close. So I'll probably go the Rangers, the Knicks 1 and 2. You can interchangeable. 3, I guess you got to go the Yankees. 4's tough. You could. That's where you get into the Islanders territory. Jets, Giants. I would say the Jets maybe 4 or 5-ish because look, you still have Aaron Rodgers. That's not great odds. I'd say the furthest away from a championship right now is the Nets. It'd be the Nets at 8. 7, I would probably go like the Mets. Look, the Mets I don't think would be very good this year, but they'll be better next year. I think they could still be only 2-3 years away. The Nets, they don't have a direction. They don't know where they're going. That's the problem. We get good chance we're talking this time next year. We're talking about close to the championship, and the Jets could be at 8 because if they don't do anything this season, they're going to be a full-blown rebuild. They're going to have to restart. Forget about even talking about playoffs. We're going to be back down to the 4-win expectation. So they'll probably sit at 4. I'd say Isles 5, Mets 6. And that doesn't make sense. No, I said 1 Rangers, 2 Knicks, Yankees 3. We'll go Jets 4, Isles 5. Nets at last. Giants, I would probably go 6. Nah, I'd say Giants. Giants are tough because you really don't know what they're doing with their quarterback. Giants, I'd probably fit in there in the middle, like 5, 6-ish. The Isles, look, they might be a playoff team. You get into the dance. I don't think the Isles will win the Stanley Cup, but, if they get into the dance, you get into the playoffs, they've got a chance, and they're on the outside, a couple points out right now. So, we'll see. But, yeah, it's one of these years. I mean, the New York, continuing to see all these other cities win, New York has got to get back to being relevant again in sports, especially with the football teams, but I don't know if there's a whole lot of optimism around that. So, anyway, that'll do it for the podcast here today. We'll have more content coming your way throughout the week. Spring training is upon us. So, of course, we'll have a lot of baseball content coming your way along with a lot of other stuff here on the channel. So, make sure you subscribe and please like the video. I appreciate all of the support. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.